Okay, well, greetings and welcome to Running the Entire Superior Hiking Trail in 5 Days with Alan Chapman. My name is Annie Nelson. I'm the Development and Communications Director for the Superior Hiking Trail Association, which is the nonprofit that protects, renews, and enhances the Superior Hiking Trail. We are excited to host this webinar today to help those of you who are interested in how Alan accomplished this incredible feat of human endurance and set the unsupported fastest known time record on the SHT. To begin, I want to acknowledge that the Superior Hiking Trail is located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe people. At the Superior Hiking Trail Association, we work to improve the resiliency and sustainability of the trail for future generations, work we've been doing for more than 38 years. We lead by harnessing the power of volunteers, supporters, partners, and trail users to break down barriers, engage participants, and create deeper relationships between people and nature. Our association is honored to serve as the stewards and promoters of this North Shore treasure, and we're pleased to welcome you to our trail community. If you would like to support our work, please visit superiorhiking.org/join to contribute. During tonight's webinar, if you have any questions, please send them to us directly using the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We are also recording this webinar and we'll post it to our YouTube channel. The recording will also feature captions for those who may be hard of hearing. And now, I'm pleased to introduce Alan Chapman. I'll let Alan share more about his background, but I will say you're in for a real treat today. At 6:07 a.m. on August 14th, 2023, Alan started his unsupported fastest known time attempt of the Superior Hiking Trail at the remote northern terminus. 5 days, 14 hours, and 12 minutes later, he arrived at the SHT's southern terminus and set a new record. During Alan's run, he generously volunteered as an ambassador for our summer membership drive, and many of us in the SHT community followed Alan's run day by day. As he progressed down the trail, logging 45+ mile days, our curiosity was on fire. We had 300 miles of questions. What gear did Alan use? How much did his pack weigh? Did he run the whole time? Did he sleep? What did he eat? And the biggest question of all, what is it like to run 300 miles, the entire Superior Hiking Trail, in 5 days? No matter our speed, every type of hiker and runner will learn something valuable from Alan's presentation to apply to our own adventures on the trail. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Alan.
Woo! Yeah. Thanks so much, Annie, and thanks to the remainder of the SHTA for putting this on, and thank you all for coming here. I hope it's a learning experience for all of you. So I'll just start by introducing myself as a trail and ultra runner, and as I age, natural places like the Superior Hiking Trail have increasingly become kind of like my happy place, and it's where I go to experience kind of the magic that we feel as children, right? So it's where I go to experience magic as an adult, and where I go to process big feelings like anxiety and stress and grief. And with my 40th birthday looming last year, I was looking for a challenge that I wasn't really sure whether or not I could complete, and would allow me some time and some space to reflect on the first half of my life, and allow me to process the fact that I'm now squarely middle-aged now. And so that's why you see this title, Midlife Crisis, Fastest Known Time on the SHT. So there will be a theme here of kind of coping with middle age. Okay. So I'll get started by saying I love trail racing, and I've enjoyed participating and pacing friends in many races, especially on the North Shore of Lake Superior. I also love running as a means of getting deep into wilderness areas and having quick adventures. And quick adventures are generally necessary, I'd say, at this stage of my life, given other demands of my time. And in general, racing and adventure running have been kind of an awesome counterbalance, I'll say, to the other areas of my life as a father and as a geology professor. And so, like I said earlier, this year I turned 40 years old, which kind of spurred me to think big. I also hired a coach last year. I figured I couldn't do all of the things like all on my own, and I'd like kind of like a guide for the process. And I eventually landed with the assistance of friends, kind of planting this seed in my mind. I landed on the lofty and also the terrifying idea of attempting the fastest known time on arguably, I would argue anyway, Minnesota's premier trail, the Superior Hiking Trail. And since this idea scared me so much, I knew, and you can see this quote here by Ralph Waldo Emerson, I knew that it was the next thing that I needed to do. And also shown here just a few things before we get started about the Superior Hiking Trail, some vital trail statistics. As Annie mentioned, the trail weaves through the ancestral homelands of the Anishinaabe people. It traverses the North Shore of Lake Superior from Canada to Wisconsin, and in doing so, it covers close to 300 miles and close to 40,000 feet worth of climbing as you work your way southbound from the northern terminus, which is the route that I went. So it involves close to 40,000 feet of climbing and descent. And from here, let's have a little bit of a look about how I prepared for this sort of effort, with the caveat that this may not be like an approach that works for everyone, right? So a little bit about training. Training in general is incremental, right? You see your training is guided by like how your body has initially been conditioned over the years, months, or even decades beforehand. And so no discussion of gear, which I'm happy to talk about gear later. No discussion of gear would be complete without acknowledging that your most important piece of gear is you, right? Is your mind, your body system, right? And so that needs to be maintained, and it needs to be primed in order to undertake this sort of thing. All other gear is going to be secondary to that sort of thing. So with the goal in mind, just to kind of give you a sense of the baseline, I started running in general in my early 20s. I caught the bug. I was doing marathons by my late 20s, and started to enjoy my time on trails after that. And so I started getting into ultra marathons, which are races that are any distance that's longer than 26.2 miles, which is what a marathon is. So I was doing ultras by my mid 30s, and this was kind of what was in my muscles and my bones and my mind by the time I had hit my mid 30s. And so it took me a while to land on this specific goal, but specific training for this effort, which was at the end of the summer of 2023. So specific training began in summer of 2022. And during that year, there were some kind of key stepping stones where I gained a lot of experience and gained a lot of good like stress within my bones and my muscles and all. So some important stepping stones along the way would be the Superior Fall 100-miler event, which takes place in September. Something called the Arrowhead 135, which is a winter ultra marathon that goes from International Falls to Tower, Minnesota. And then not too long before this effort, I did Kettle Moraine 100-miler. So that's over some pretty good undulating terrain in Wisconsin. But those are the sorts of experiences that were kind of like the glamorous aspect of the year preceding this effort, with this effort being another kind of glamorous, like appearing thing, right? But most training, the day in and day out, is not glamorous at all. It involves lots of getting up and not necessarily wanting to run, and just kind of getting out with some regularity. Mostly easy running, one time per week, running a little bit faster, and then maybe one time a week running a little bit longer than the remainder. And then recovering in the time in between is pretty key. And then getting even more specific, the general arc of like a training program is to start more general, kind of gain some proficiency as far as speed and distance go, and then get very specific for your event as you get closer to the event. And so with that in mind, about a month before this effort, I phased in running with a backpack. I knew that my backpack was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about like 30 pounds pack weight to begin with. And so I started phasing in running with the backpack. And then to get even more specific, my coach recommended that I do a fast packing trip. So a lot like a backpacking, basically backpacking rebranded to involve some proportion of running. And so this fast packing trip involved 3 nights out, and starting around Tetagooch and kind of winding my way toward Duluth, where my ride would be waiting for me. And so I got out for 2 nights with a good friend of mine. The first couple sections were about, well, all sections of this were about 35 miles, just getting some good effort into the mind and body, and then kind of seeing if I could kind of keep that up for a good long time, get a good dose in there. Also, this was a great opportunity to test some gear, right? So thinking about the food that my body would tolerate for this sort of an effort, thinking that during the actual effort that similar foods would be tolerated, and that sort of thing. Also, trying out like my water kind of filtration system, and all of that good stuff. So this happened again about 5 weeks out, which gave me a good amount of time to recover. I was still kind of feeling it toward the like 3 or 4 weeks after this trip. So if anything, I would maybe do a fast packing trip like this, maybe like 6 or 7 weeks out from an actual attempt. Okay, so on the fast packing trip, I enjoyed lots of great stuff, like some beautiful views. The Superior Hiking Trail has a fair amount of rocks and roots, so got to experience all that it had to offer in terms of rocks and roots. This time of year as well. This was in July, and so bugs were a factor, right? So I got to use my bug netting, and made sure that all of my material was treated with some tick repellent material, some tick killing material, and that I had lots of some lotion that tends to repel things like biting flies and mosquitoes, but not entirely. So the whole goal of this trip was to kind of go through the motions and to see what sorts of unexpected things came about, so that when it was go time, the unexpected was expected. And so one of the things that I ended up experiencing and kind of planned to do was to cold soak my food, right? Like there's a limited amount of space in my pack for things like a stove. And I generally like love warm food when I get to camp, or starting the day with a nice warm cup of coffee. But in this case, it was going to be, I knew it was going to be more comfortable to not have a stove bouncing around on my back the entire time. And so with that in mind, I ended up cold soaking a fair amount of stuff. And here's just a little video showing me cold soaking some grits. This was my first cold soak experience.
Nothing like a little grits on the trail, cold soaked grits. Mm-mm. Delicious.
Yummy, right? This video, it shows me kind of moving along on the trail because most moments when I was eating, I was also trying to move, with the idea that if you're sitting still, not going anywhere, then you're not kind of making progress toward the ultimate goal of getting there. Okay, during the trip, I experienced a thunderstorm. It was a pretty wild storm that happened during the night. It tested my shelter system kind of to the max, to the point where my tarp kind of fell down on me. It was me and like this frog that was sitting underneath the tarp. The frog and I just kind of staring at one another. This frog just presumably trying to get out of the rain itself, because it was like big fat rain. Like the raindrops were like approaching probably like 10% of the size of like this frog's body. And so he was just kind of staring at me. I was just kind of staring at him, and kind of shared a moment underneath this tarp. But this is kind of giving you a sense of what was kind of going through my mind during the waning stages of this thunderstorm.
That was a fun thunderstorm. Just woke up. I guess I didn't really wake up. I've been laying here for a while. Everything's pretty wet. My pole just fell down, so my shelter is. I'm basically plastered against the ground. Which I'm taking in a sign to get out of bed. I'm gonna see how wet everything is. Maybe they call Kelly and arrange a rescue if everything's wet on my feet to get completely drenched. We'll see. It'd be an awesome day. Never know.
And so, it's always going to be, and through hikers and runners and folks may be familiar with this kind of push pull of this is an amazing place being out here, and just like feeding off of that positivity, while also feeling the effects, the mind draining and physically draining effects of doing something hard, like out in the wilderness, with the wilderness not necessarily being perfect weather all the time. And so one thing that I alluded to in this video is getting trench foot, which is essentially a condition when your skin on your foot, when you have like really wet shoes and just kind of continue kind of moving forward with wet shoes, is that maceration can happen. And eventually it becomes pretty ugly and can get pretty painful. Your feet start looking like ghosts. They turn like really light colored. And the best way to kind of prevent that sort of thing is to make sure that the moisture barrier of your feet is intact. So whenever that happened, I tended to rub my feet with some like Vaseline, and try to change my socks if I had access to a dry pair of socks, which wasn't always the case. Okay, so that was that trip. It was a good trip, and gave me a lot to think about as far as how much fuel I was going to need for each day, what gear worked, what gear didn't work as well. And so this is me now laying out all of my food for the big effort, the unsupported FKT attempt. And so the goal here is to have the previous unsupported FKT set by Jeff Roundhorst a few years back. Was set in 5 days, 17 hours and 59 minutes. And in order to do that sort of thing, an unsupported FKT in general, what that entails is hauling all of your gear and all of your food from start to finish with no help along the way. And there are supported FKTs. You can do a supported FKT where you're able to see a crew and maybe like sleep in a nice warm van for certain amounts of time, and to have like, you know, massages whenever you want. Not whenever you want, but whenever you see your crew. But I was kind of figuring that I might as well do this. If I'm going to do this, I might as well do this in the dumbest possible way, which is to go like alone and to haul all of my gear. And like, joking aside, people that are like on the taller side, like myself, tend to have the advantage of your backpack. You know, if it's weighing a certain amount, given like your size, big guys or big women as well, like have an advantage in the unsupported category. I feel like, because the ratio of your pack weight to your strength is going to be a bit better. And so these are my food items. It's kind of arranged by day. So we've got like day 1 up here, day 2. You might see some commonalities from day to day. And I'm happy to talk about like any details of the food or details of the gear later as well. But just generally on my body, like kind of going from like base upward, I had trail running shoes that were a size bigger than I usually run in, because I knew that my feet were going to swell throughout the process. I had running tights on, which might you know, raise a red flag in your mind, because you might be thinking, this is August when you're planning on doing this. It's going to be kind of warm, which you're right. But I also kind of struggle with eczema and have my whole life, and I know that material brushing up against my legs can be kind of a trigger for that. So I wanted to make sure that I was just covering up when possible. A sun hoodie. I had some trekking poles as well, which comes in handy with the sleep setup, because in order to set up the tarp, which was my cover, it relies on a pole. And so I had a system where I had a bivy, basically like a sock that you crawl inside. And on top of that, I had a quilt that was good down to 40 degrees. And I tend to run a bit cold, and 40 degrees was not quite warm enough on a few nights, but it ended up working out. Food wise, you can see what I ended up taking in the background here. It's basically 18 pounds worth of junk food. So, you know, who doesn't want to spend days and days in the wilderness eating candy? You know, it's like the best possible experience. Miscellaneous items, we've got headlamps, we've got other electronic stuff like phone, which was key for navigation and documenting the trip, power banks, cords, had a water filter that you'll see progressively kind of slowed down over the course of the effort here, and like a little mini kind of Ziploc bag full of things, primarily for carrying for my feet. So that included Vaseline and, you know, tape for taping blisters and that sort of thing. Right, moving right along. So let's start, right? On August 14th at 6:08 a.m., I made an entry into the logbook at the northern terminus. My son, Gabriel, and my wife, Kelly, in that center picture, saw me off on this wild adventure. They hiked the mile from the parking to the northern terminus with me, and then we said goodbye and said that we'd see each other in about 5.5 days or so. So let's go. Day 1 was the biggest day in terms of distance, so covered close to 60 miles. Was feeling pretty fresh. for most of the day, which is good because there's plenty of time to like, you know, tire yourself out. So that's not going to be the case for long, right? I was feeling pretty fresh for the majority of that. I'd say until about the time I got to Grand Marais, and there's a big climb out of Grand Marais that ended up kind of kicking my butt a bit. But yeah, just kind of some bullet points here. Started out with a 28-pound pack. Again, 18 pounds of that were food. And so that was kind of bouncing around in my bag, but again, the legs were pretty fresh, so I couldn't complain too much about that. Kind of weaved through here, went through the highest point, which is about 1,800 feet, descended through CR Magni, and then hit the lake walk here. So this little stretch here and this image down here in the lower right is from the lake walk, and they call it the lake walk because it's pretty much impossible to run. It's like 100% like little pebbles, and if you start trying to run through that, you're just putting so much energy into the beach that you're just gonna, you'll end up going the same speed and tiring yourself out. And so for this whole day, I kind of had the thought in mind that the previous FKT holder set up camp along the Devil Track River, which is right about here, just east of Grand Marais. And the way my mind works is that I wanted to know that I was making progress every day, that I was kind of in the lead. If I felt behind, I knew that was going to be a bit stressful to me. So I wanted to make sure that I got a bit further down the trail. And so it's about 10 miles from where he camped to where ultimately I ended up camping that night, which was at North Valley Creek Pond. And so it was a pond, and so water at that pond was a bit, left a bit to be desired. It was a bit like, scummier than the water along the Devil Track River, but yeah, again, couldn't complain too much about that. Day two, a bit lower in terms of mileage, kind of settling in. I'd say like days 2, 3, and 4 were kind of like a settling in period where your mind is settling into the task at hand. You still have a long way to go, and you're trying to take things one step at a time so you don't think about the enormity of what you have to do still. You're also kind of settling in metabolically. And so day one, you kind of have this thought that like I need to be eating, but I'm actually like not all that hungry. Your metabolism has not yet ramped up to keep pace with the demands that you're putting on your body. But kind of later in day 2, certainly by day 3, day 4, you're taking in far more calories at that point, and you're reducing your pack weight, which is kind of nifty. But this day, a couple other noteworthy aspects. I started out with like a wrong turn. It was really pretty along the Cascade River, but it was a wrong turn nonetheless. I ended up going the wrong way on the Cascade loop, and so I had to backtrack about half a mile to a mile in order to get back on back to the point where I was seeing blue blazes. The first white blaze, which kind of conveys to you that you're on a spur trail, that you see kind of like, oh shoot, like I kind of botched this. So I turned around. While it was super pretty, I was a bit frustrated. And this was the day where I started kind of strategically incorporating more rest. I kind of got out of this mindset of like forward progress, regardless of what's going on. And I started taking some sit breaks and trying to multitask at water sources, so that I was able to kind of sit for like 5 minutes while I filtered water. So getting some rest while I was getting some water. And I would say that day 2 was mentally and physically the hardest day. It's this body settling in and kind of adapting to the discomfort that's really starting to aggressively kind of settle in. So I stopped a bit sooner than I did on day one this day. So I stopped at about 10 p.m. at a camp along the South Cross River on day two. Day one, I think I went well past midnight. And I ended up sleeping something like 3 hours on day one, but day two, I kind of got there thinking I need a bit more sleep. I need to recover from this effort. And so a couple quick clips from day two, capturing this roller coaster of a day it was. Here I am kind of psyched to be looking at like a cute river. And here I am after I haven't had enough snacks and I'm kind of a bit of a grouch. So we'll do the positive one first.
Check out this scenic vista. Got a nice little meandering stream there. So cute. Oh, baby.
And then climbing up out of Lutzen.
Just climbed up and over Mystery Mountain and then Moose Mountain. Collecting the first water for a while. I'm just kind of taking 20 minutes or so to regroup. It's hard. This is just day two. I have a hard time not thinking about the subsequent days. I know I'm supposed to think about it in shorter chunks. I'm having a hard time with that. So hopefully I'm able to reset here. Get back going. We're at about 30 miles today. So hopefully tack on another at least 15, ideally 20.
That can be a real struggle of trying to think in terms of like what's happening right now when you've got, you know, days to go. So basically, like the only advice I can offer on that sort of thing is to try not to think about it. That it really makes no sense to think about anything other than what's happening right now. Like in the moment on the trail here, but also in your regular day-to-day life.
Check it.
Okay. Set up camp and the morning of day three. I said day two was the hardest, but morning of day three, I would say it was rock bottom because I was really close to Tofty. I thought about walking into Tofty, and I was also really close to a friend's cabin where I know where he keeps like the key for his cabin. So I was having all of these thoughts, and this kind of captures that.
This morning, day three.
Add subtitles here.
I went to bed last night thinking like, okay, we're not. Everything hurts. And woke up feeling like, okay, I'm not like, I don't have bones sticking out or anything like that. So I guess I'll start the day at least and see where things go. Everything hurts though.
In this case, it was easier to just get up and start hiking down the trail because if I was going to bail out, I'd need to start moving down the trail anyway. So day three ended up kind of able to push through that rock bottom. Wanting to quit as soon as I woke up with everything hurting. But then once I started moving, especially like a mile down the trail, the soreness kind of magically dissipated. But my mind was still not with it. I think that it was a result of not realizing how much my metabolism had kind of ramped up and how hungry I was. And so never, I'd say that snacks are magical. And if you're kind of starting to feel a little grouchy, don't underestimate the power of snacks to kind of break you out of a funk. So that was good, kind of getting some more snacks on board. I took my first dirt nap in the middle of the day. So what that entails is kind of finding a nice, you know, like a slab of rock in this case, a nice flat slab of rock, and then just kind of like laying down and enjoying about like 10 minutes worth of napping. I fell asleep pretty much instantly and woke up feeling recharged. And so I kind of resolved to do more things like that as time went on. A couple other interesting things happening on this day that we'll see some videos on, including a thunderstorm. So this is a little glimpse into how my mood had been improved by food.
It's about 10:30 on day 3, 10:30 a.m. obviously. Now I'm wondering what have I done to get to this mental state right now? Because I feel mentally great in addition to physically. We got thimbleberries, wild thimbleberries, I think. Taste like them. They're super ripe and tasty. My wife told me that I needed to wait until day 3 before trying wild berries. So it's day 3. Here we are.
We're throwing caution to the wind. We're trying the trailside food and getting some antioxidants to combat all the Skittles that I'm eating too. Thunderstorm was brewing, and I knew from glimpsing at the weather in advance of this trip, I knew that there was a window of a couple hours when a storm was supposed to roll through. And so this is kind of the calm before the storm, which in this case, I felt lucky that it hit during the day, because when you're like laying down in your bed at night and a thunderstorm is hitting you, you're not going to be sleeping, and you're also not making progress down the trail. So that's kind of almost like wasted time in this sort of effort. But in this case, I just kind of figured, all right, I'm going to be kind of like moving through this storm. All of my sleep and other clothing stuff is like sealed up in a plastic bag in my pack, and so that's all going to be kept dry. So might as well keep moving.
All right. Day 3. It's coming up on 6 o'clock. This is the storm. The one storm that I saw forecast going into this. It's supposed to be relatively brief, but surprises can happen. So we'll just see how wet it get. Gonna hike through it because, well, it's still early in the day. There. Still early in the day, but also I think it sucks, being in a tent, having rain come down on you more than if you're hiking in the rain. Hot takes.
All right, so that was the calm before the storm, and then here's after the storm. I wasn't able to get my phone out during the storm because I wanted it to continue being able to navigate for me. So this is kind of like the glorious lighting that kind of came about toward the end of the day.
Section 13. Post-storm. Hopefully post-storm. All right, let's keep going while it's bright.
Okay, while you can. And so a couple other noteworthy, or I guess one other noteworthy thing. I've always loved this feature along the Superior Hiking Trail. It's called the Lime Squeezer. The trail kind of routes itself through this fracture in the rock. And so that allows you kind of to squeeze your body through this little space. And right as I came out on the other side of the lime squeezer, there was a slippery rock, and I fell and I came down on my pole. But I was fortunately able to kind of MacGyver a solution where I used a tent stake and kind of duct taped it to my pole, and it held from day 3 until the end. So my pole was still viable for that point on. All right, hopping over to day 4. This would end up being the last kind of normal day. Normal being relative. So this ended up being a close to 50-mile day with a lot of climbing. This kind of central part of the trail in general is kind of notorious for the amount of climbing that accompanies it. Woke up that day in higher spirits, but a bit wet. At this point, foot care became important, so regularly slathering my feet with Vaseline. I had a couple blisters at this point too, but like nothing too horrible. With the blisters, they were getting to a point where the pressure from the blister was impinging on my foot and kind of affecting my gait a bit. So I ended up lancing those and putting some tape on my feet, and that made me a much happier camper. Another weird injury that kind of came up about at this point was I had been eating lots of crunchy food. So lots of things like Oreos and Fritos. And what ended up being kind of like a winning strategy for combating this like pain in my mouth was to, like, I had been cold soaking all of my other food up to this point. So I kind of started cold soaking my food that I was eating throughout the day. So I would kind of put some Fritos in my mouth and get a bunch of water in there too to kind of soak things in my mouth, or even in like the plastic bag itself. So I think I have a video on that here. Yep, cold soaking some Fritos.
Filling up with water at the Beaver River. It's kind of sedimenty, but not too bad. And when your mouth starts getting cut up by like chips and candy all the time, you start cold soaking things like Fritos.
And it actually was surprisingly like not too bad. I think my body was just craving like the calories and the salt, so I gladly wolfed that down. Right. And so this was kind of, things were kind of starting to get pretty fun at this point, because I started seeing things like a sign at the southern for the southern terminus being a little over 100 miles away. So I was starting to see evidence that I was making headway. I ended up camping that night at Silver Creek. So that's another kind of interesting section where you have to hike in about 2 miles, maybe a little shy of 2 miles, and then you have to hike back out, because the trail used to continue through along the creek, but there have been some land issues in recent history, and so the trail now involves a road walk. But for the sake of this picture that's here in the background, when I woke up, or before I went to sleep rather, at Silver Creek, I kind of did an inventory of the amount of food that I had remaining. And so I had about 100 miles to go at that point and about 10,000 calories. And so the idea that kind of raised a little bit of an alarm, because for every day I had been taking in around like 6,500 calories. And I had essentially like 2-day equivalents left. And that would kind of budget out to about 5,000 calories per day. And so I kind of had the sense that I was going to need to get a little bit rationy with my food, but also kept in mind that over the next 2 days, I wasn't going to want to feel depleted for that entire time. So the strategy that I kind of settled on with a little consultation with my coach, I kind of traded some texts with him, was to keep eating as normal, and that when I kind of got closer to the end, I'd be taking in closer to like 100 calories per hour. And then before that, I had been taking in closer to like 300 calories per hour. So I was going to be, I knew at this point I was going to be bonking by the end, but not yet. Day 5. So started out at Silver Creek here, backtracked to the road, and went inland for this Two Harbors section. That's kind of an inland section. And as soon as I kind of veered inland, it got a little bit more humid, a little bit hotter, and also bugs became pretty horrendous. It was pretty challenging to not be thinking about the bugs that were swarming me the entire time. Also at this point, the Spear Hiking Trail shares a few miles with the North Shore State Trail. And I knew from my fast packing trip that that trail can get pretty overgrown, but then when I got there, I saw that it had been mowed recently. So that was kind of like a little mini celebration that ended up happening. So let's have a look here.
And someone's been out with a weed whacker since the last time I was here, because a lot of these sections were just breaking through chest deep ferns and couldn't even see the trail. But now it's in much better shape. Woohoo!
It was a reason to celebrate for sure. And then once I got to maybe around here, I kind of had the thought in mind that we're kind of getting close to the end, and I need to have a strategy for how I'm going to approach the final day. So that strategy ended up materializing as I saw that there was a snowmobile shelter right about here. And so I had the thought that I would, kind of push for like a normal-ish day, 50-ish miles. I'd sit down on the bench for about 30 minutes or so, have some food, pretend like it was the end of my day, and then I would wake up after that 30 minutes and just kind of try to see if I could make it to the Wisconsin border. Along the way, just like little joyous kind of things kind of kept popping up. So this was one of them, seeing this little vortex along, I think it was the Stewart River, that was just kind of like seemingly playing in the river.
This is the Stewart River. Wonderful water sighting. Check this out. A little cyclone stream into rocks. Never seen that before. Oh, it's just like simple little things like that that are wild to me. Filtering water. Water filtration system slowing down for sure. It takes about 5 minutes now to get a liter of water. So it is what it is. Keep on keeping on.
So you get like a little glimpse into a couple things there. Like magical things are happening on the trail that you have to kind of recognize and kind of allow that magic to kind of work its way into your mind and to like give you a positive outlook, and also kind of gives you a glimpse into like what the water filtration, how that was going at this stage. It was going pretty slowly. My filter, this Catadine filter system with soft flasks was pretty slow, but at this point I was happy to sit for 10 minutes at a time filtering water. My body appreciated that anyway. So all right, and then the finishing bit. Right. So I woke up at the snowmobile shelter. I think it was around like 11 or 11:30 at night, and kind of made my way into Duluth. And so I think I ended up making my way into Duluth proper around like 3 a.m. And this would have been on a Friday night. And so I was kind of stumbling through town, and in a couple other places in town, I saw other people that were kind of stumbling around after like a night of enjoying some time out like on the town. So we were all kind of stumbling around in kind of like a special way, like together, you know, but for fundamentally different reasons. Some other fun stuff happened along this finishing push. I ended up having a porcupine kind of run in front of me for a good long stretch. I ended up using dirt naps pretty frequently. I think I ended up taking 3 or 4 dirt naps throughout the day. But fortunately, there are like these amazing basalt like rock slabs that functioned as like awesome beds throughout the day. The last dirt nap really saved me because I was having some pretty wild hallucinations and involving seeing branches grow out of trees in real time. I kind of had the thought to myself, like, that can't be real. I should probably address this. I also saw little piglets along the side of the trail that were kind of waving at me, and I knew that that probably wasn't real either. They ended up, when I got closer to them, I saw that they were little logs, but at the time they were these cute little piglets. Navigation through Duluth, I'd say, like, as far as navigation went, this was the most challenging navigating that you're doing for the entire trail, because as opposed to seeing blue blazes on trees that you're used to seeing, the blazes are going to be on things like stop signs. And so it can be a bit challenging, especially as you kind of weave through blocks in the city. Had a couple hornet stings. I had managed to avoid being stung by anything or had any like adverse thing happen with wildlife or anything, but I got 2 hornet stings on the same day. But each time it was almost like a little gift where you get like a little surge of adrenaline afterward, and momentarily you're moving pretty quick. So silver lining. Hey, here's my porcupine. Kind of see this guy or gal up in front of me. And let's see how that goes.
Get out of the trail, bud. Are you my pacer? Spine me. Maybe I could lead. You could pace me from behind. All right. See ya.
He just kind of ducked into the woods there, never to be seen again. I avoid getting spined and shared some nice time with my friend. Okay. This is kind of closing in on the finish. I turned a corner, one of probably 20 corners that I thought the end was going to be around the corner, but it was not. In this case, it finally happened.
No way.
Yes way. Here's from the other perspective. My wife met me at the finish. Oh, welcome to Wisconsin. Oh, it's pretty psyched. I ended up signing the register. My wife, and this is another situation where you're parking and you're hiking into the southern terminus. So she hiked in the 2 miles that it is to the southern terminus, and I would say that those were probably 2 of the most challenging trail miles that I had the entire time out there. Because what happens is that your mind tells you, like, I've got this far to go, and then we're done. And then when you get to this point, you still have to hike back to the car. So that was kind of tough. But she had brought me a ginger ale and a tuna salad sandwich, and both were really super delicious. Ooh, and I got a cake out of the deal. So that kind of brings us to a conclusion of sorts here. So I just want to end with some notes of gratitude for everyone that was kind of along for this ride, and everyone that was of great help to me. Like this was definitely not, even though it's entered as a unsupported FKT, right? There was plenty of support that went into it. Like my wife and family generously allowing me to go out and train, and also for kind of schlepping me around to places like the northern terminus. I'd like to thank the SHTA for being such amazing cheerleaders throughout this process. Annie was along for like the entire uh, time out there, and it was pretty amazing to occasionally get service and see that all the activity that she had drummed up on the Facebook group. So I'd urge all of you, if you haven't already, to consider donating to the Spear Hiking Trail Association and becoming a member of the SHTA. We all love this trail, and we want to see it continue to be an awesome place for years and years to come. I'd also like to thank my coach, Joe. His trail name is Stringbean McConaughey, and friends that implanted this idea in my mind years ago, just kind of and shared a lot of trail miles with me over the years. All of these things were kind of key to this even coming about, and I can't express my thanks enough. So love you all very much, and I guess I'll stop there and see if there are questions.
Thank you so much, Alan. That was incredible. And we do, yeah, please everyone throw your questions into the Q&A. We do have a question from Kyle. He says, Alan, outstanding. Now that you've done it, do you think you can do it faster?
Yeah. And it's a dangerous way of thinking, right? Because I think like 5 days and 12 hours, I think I left or 14 hours rather. I think that there were 14 hours worth of kind of dilly-dallying and like maybe sleeping a fair amount and maybe other things that I've learned that I could kind of shave off. It'd be cool to go under 5 days for sure. But I'd be equally excited to see someone else do that. And if someone else is having these sorts of thoughts, feel free to get in touch, and I'm happy to share like all the information that I have to share on making that possible.
That's what I was thinking during your presentation. Is I'm wondering if one of these names I'm seeing of the participants, will be the new record holder this year or next year. So that would be cool.
That'd be sweet.
Okay, we have another question. What was your favorite section?
There are a couple of awesome sections. So I had never done like up by like Lake Agnes before. That was amazingly beautiful, and had that little kind of meandering stream that I kind of fixated on in one of the videos. My mindset was not in the right place during that section, but I was also still conscious of the fact that it was stunning. And I think like I would maybe like kind of underscore that as like a most beautiful section. And then there are just a ton of like highs along the way, like along this roller coaster of like mini highs and then crushing lows. One of the highs would be like toward the beginning, being able to spend some time with my family, and then kind of get this thing rolling and feeling really fresh. Lots of places along the way, and then finishing has got to be a highlight as well.
And then we have a question from Michael Copy, who you probably know is the current supported fastest known time record holder. Michael wants to know, what would you do differently if you did it again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I would sleep less. As much as I enjoyed being in bed, one of the nights I was in bed for like 5 hours or so, and a couple of those hours was just lying there hurting. um and so I could have been spending time like in pain while also moving down the trail, as opposed to sitting there not wanting to be moving down the trail and just being in pain. So I think that having been through this and knowing that I can do this sort of thing, that those would be hours that I would be able to shave off, would be spending less time sleeping, maybe even like going through the first day without sleep and kind of accumulating some sleep debt on the front end. So that would be one of the things that Andrea Larson, who also got the women's unsupported FKT not long after my outing, and she kind of took an approach of like, going out hard and then sleeping a bit in the middle and then getting some more sleep deprivation toward the end. So I guess
Yeah, I was
encapsulating that all, like sleeping a little bit less.
interesting. And I was gonna ask that, like, so what was like the max? Because it's clear on your your last 2 days, you basically had like a half an hour sleep between that, which was more than 100 miles you did on half an hour of sleep right at the end. What was the longest sleep? Was it that 5 hours you mentioned, or
It was that 5 hours, yeah. So that would have been like the day two going into day three.
yeah. It's another thing that kind of separates the ultra marathoners from us backpackers, I think, because when you do long distance backpacking, that sleep is like magic, you know? I mean, it's what fixes your body. So you guys are, do you think that your endurance, you also mentioned that you didn't really bonk, you weren't anticipating bonking until the very last day. And for anybody who doesn't know what bonking is, it's kind of a fairly regular thing that happens. It's like your blood sugar, you just use up your calories, all of a sudden your energy level just plummets, but it can be a very mentally tough moment to continue your goal for that day, whatever, whether it's an ultra marathon or just hiking 15 miles. Because you just don't want to keep moving. And so did you not really have those low blood sugar moments or bonks until that final day?
I think it was I was in a pretty good place as far as like the calorie intake until like the final day. And I did end up bonking that final day, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think that a factor might have been that like you're just moving so slow. And so I think that one of the questions that you mentioned earlier was like what proportion of the time are you like running versus walking? Like it's going to be at least 50% walking in a given day. And I think that like toward the end it was maybe running like 20% or something like that. And so you're well into like low kind of aerobic territory where you're making use of existing fat stores to some degree, while also assimilating like these quick burning, like sugary calories. And so I think that a fair amount of like wasting away and assimilating fat stores was happening, because I did end up dropping like 9 or 10 pounds, I think it was, like when I was finished. I didn't know that you could like you could waste away that much over the course of like 5.5 days, but apparently you can.
Wow. Wow. A couple other folks would love to know a little bit about your gear. So they would like to know what pack and what shoes you used and if you would recommend them.
Yeah, so I had a Palante Joey for the pack. It's great. It's like one of the first and like one of the best fast packs that's out there. It doesn't have a hip belt, but it packs in such a way that it really doesn't bounce a ton. You've got water on front as well. A lot of backpacks will have water back, and that's something that you have to reach for, but also like with the water in front, it's counterbalancing your weight so that you kind of feel like you're more even in kind of like the front to back plane, which I really enjoyed about that. So I couldn't recommend that higher. And then shoes, I'm a like wide foot boy. So I enjoy Topos. And the specific model is called the Topo Ultra Venture Pro. For a trail that's pretty technical, like the Superior Hiking Trail, having like a shoe that can kind of address the technicality of the trail, like that Topo Ultra Venture Pro, is going to be pretty key. And there's some like the trail was pretty dry in general, but were some like good muddy sections, and like the depth of the lugs on these like really durable outsoles was really good. And I was impressed by that, but I've been impressed by these shoes for a while, and no one's paying me to say any of these things, so I would highly endorse that.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then kind of related, is there a piece of gear that you would just never want to use or even look at again? And same question for food.
So the dumbest piece of gear that I had along was a GoPro, and like I would actually enjoy like having it along like the next time, but the issue was that I started it. I was taking a video, and this was on day one, and I put it away. I thought I had turned it off, but it spent like a few hours just recording nothing in my bag. um I should say like no video. It did capture a couple times when I like swore or like burped or farted. But beyond that, it really didn't like capture anything meaningful. So that was the biggest dead weight. I was carrying that for the next like 5 days, with it not being able to do anything. Aside from that, I did bring 3 pairs of socks, and I think next time I would maybe only bring 2, because I really kind of alternated between a couple pairs of socks, and like once everything's wet, so it doesn't even make sense to have 3 pairs of socks anymore. So I would just maybe bring like one less pair of socks, but everything was pretty dialed, honestly.
The amount of sleep that you are getting to clarifies for me kind of the wet foot issue, because I'll confess that like I love the SHT to death. We've had a couple of dry seasons too, but normally it's pretty wet, and I just kind of embrace it. I don't even bother wearing, vapor barriers or anything. I just think my feet are gonna get wet, but my feet always get a chance to dry out at night, because I always have one pair of socks that never rotate out there for tent. They don't even leave the tent. And so that makes a lot of sense, because you have a lot less time for your feet to dry out. I get you. Rob would like to know. Oh, we'll get back. Actually, I forgot. There was a part 2 to that question, which is there a food that you brought with you one that you really liked and one you're just never going to touch again?
Yeah, I loved and continue to love Oreos. It's just like everything about it is just like magic. And I always feel great like after eating those, and never have any like ill effects. And then I got these like meal replacement bars that I showed in that first image. They're called range bars. And like the first one like tasted great. They're like 700 calories, so they're kind of like a bomb worth of calories. But I kind of had the thought that I would like have that be my breakfast each morning, and uh, it worked for like the first couple days, but then beyond that, it was just too much. And it's nothing against like those bars, but like I overdid it, and like in such a way where like these calories are calories, and I'm going to need to eat them, and so I kind of begrudgingly continued to eat them because it was what I had available. But I don't think I'll see those in my pack anytime soon.
think there's this weird balance between a long distance or like I can't even imagine what you guys go through with this, but yeah, you're so hungry when your metabolism kicks up. Long distance backpackers on the SHT, this happens to as well. And you're so hungry, and then but there's this weird thing that happens where like you want none of the food that you have all of a sudden, so it becomes really hard to eat, and you're just in this kind of weird. So I swore I wasn't going to eat any bars, after my through hikes that I brought with me, and I eat them every week now. So just give it a little time; they might come back. Rob wanted to know, as you flew by all these campsites, which one looked the best and almost got you to double back and just chill for a sec?
I think the Caribou River. There's this awesome campsite that's just kind of perched like right above the river. When I got to the Caribou River, I was kind of in high spirits because the water at the river was really clean and it tasted really good. That's another thing, is that like each river has like different water, like different appearance, and also has like a different flavor. And so that was kind of interesting in and of itself, but the Caribou River water was like the best. And the camp just above it is very pretty. So I'd love to spend some time there.
It is a really nice site. It's also a favorite swimming spot on the
Ooh,
trail up the
yeah, I
river.
soaked my feet there for a good long time too. It was
There's
nice
some
and
nice.
cold, and my feet were definitely thanking me after that.
There's a big group site there, you guys, too. So there's a smaller site that's, I think, is the one Alan's talking about, which is up on this really cool cliff over the river. But then there's a really big, also, I think it's got 2 different fire rings and like tons of different temp pads. So it's a nice place to aim for too, even on a busy weekend, because you're gonna find a spot there. This is a comment from Tanya, and it's great. She says, not a question, but my husband and I were on the trail at the same time, first timers heading north from the southern terminus. And anytime we got tired, we'd say out loud, Alan isn't stopping. We shouldn't either. You inspired us to keep going.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Um, glad I could help, and nice job being out there.
Phil would love to know, or Phil also says, congrats on an incredible achievement. And what are some books or other resources for a novice runner to aim towards taking on similar challenges?
The one that comes to mind is a book by kind of like a well-renowned coach in like the ultra running space. His name is Jason Koop. And I think he for sure has a second volume of this book. I haven't read the second one, but the first one is great. The second one's going to be even better. It's called Training Essentials for Ultra Runners. And it has everything in it, from kind of visualizing like long-term goals, and kind of using those as stepping stones, and kind of filling in the training around that, and kind of like placing kind of like little mini goals that will kind of get you to the bigger goals in the greater context, and also gets into a number of kind of sports physiology topics that as kind of like an academic / like geeky person, like I kind of geek out on that sort of thing anyway. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
When I saw your training chart, yes, the fellow trail data geek, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And just for anybody who hasn't seen too, I have been kind of tossing links into the chat during Alan's presentation to things he was referencing. So that book he just mentioned, that link's in there. There's also some of the races that he mentioned kind of using to train for this experience in 2022. That information is there as well. And we just have 3 more questions left. So thank you all so much for hanging in there with us. Caitlin would love to know, what did recovery look like after you finished? This photo of you with the walker is so hilarious.
That was stage 1. Yeah, my father-in-law, he lives not too far from the southern terminus. So fortunately, it was like a 20-minute drive from the terminus to his place where I could kind of crash. So that was kind of stage 1, was sleeping for something like 12 hours. So fortunately I'd finished the night before at like 9 p.m. and I was able to get back to his place and have like a semi-normal like night of sleep. So my sleep schedule wasn't terribly like off after that. Um, but yeah, recovery, um, it's it was kind of strange in that I didn't feel like it took as long as I thought it was going to. I think that um maybe some amount of your body being told like we're gonna do this and then we're gonna do the same thing the next day and then we're gonna do the same thing the next day. It kind of gets into this mode of like, okay, well, this is all the time I have to recover, so I guess we're gonna use it however we can. But I would say that I took like 2 weeks like super chill. I think the first week I didn't do like any running. I did some like walks. Um, and I was maybe back to like doing some like 2 or 3 mile runs like the second week. And then I the next like big-ish thing I did was like another race that I really really like. It's called the Superior Fall 100 miler. My I didn't do that. Like that would have been like absurd. But because this race is a couple weeks after the SHT thing that I did, but I ended up pacing a friend for a chunk of that race, which I could definitely feel that there was lots of recovery to go. And this would have been 3 weeks after I'd finished. So 3 weeks out, I still had a fair amount to go. And it's always the kind of speed that returns last. Like I'm able to do like slow, like longer things sooner. But if you want to do anything like speedy, that like those muscle fibers seem to take longer for me in terms of recovery. So it was a process. It was slow, but my mind was also satisfied with what I'd been able to assemble, what I'd been able to put together. That my hunger for doing other stuff was not being affected by my inability to do anything. I was content to kind of sit on my butt for a few weeks.
You definitely earned it. Um, and Jeff was hoping to know if any of your snacks kind of you noticed gave you the most energy.
There were a few times where I took in like a handful of Skittles and I loved it. Um, so like that was kind of something that really kind of like kept would be like little doses of excitement. I didn't mention, but I had Tailwind, which is like a powder that you like add to water. I kind of like stirred that in throughout, and so I kind of had this slow, steady drip of calories that was coming from the liquid, and that was very consistently there, and I was very happy to have that. Snickers bars were also really nice. Every once in a while, every time I got to like a nice view, I kind of like had it in my mind like this is time to mow a Snickers.
I love that. That's a great way to do it. All right, last question for the night. Thank you all so much for coming, and I'll just have a couple more comments at the end here, but we'll end with Alan, what are your future running goals?
Yeah, I would say that like for this year, I have my sights set on the border route trail, which Annie I think would agree is kind of like a hidden or a less known gem that we have in this state. Kind of like the Superior hiking trail, but like maybe even a little bit more rugged and less maintained, and so therefore like a bit tougher, but it's also shorter, right? It's about 65 miles, and I'm starting to have thoughts about going for the unsupported FKT on that, like late this summer. So that might be in the cards. And then I was mentioning earlier that I've got like, I'm a geology professor. And so with that, like I tend to have a bit more freedom over the summers. And the thought keeps bubbling up, and I no longer can like ignore it, I don't think. But the idea of through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, I wouldn't go for like a speed record or anything like that. I just want to through hike it. I think would be super fun. So that's kind of like what's occupying my thoughts these days.
Yes, 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 yes. You should do that. All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us tonight. Big, huge thank you to Alan for sharing his incredible journey with us. And we'd also like to give a special thanks to all of you who donated at registration. And if you haven't yet and would like to do so, you can make a donation or become a member at superiorhiking.org/join. Support from trail users like you powers our work of keeping the SHT beautiful and available for amazing endurance adventures like Alan's, and allows us to provide helpful information like this. So our final webinar of the season is for kiddos. It's Take Your Best Shot Trail Photography for Kids. And that's going to take place Saturday, April 20th at 2 p.m. If you'd like to join us for more events, you can follow us on social media or sign up for our monthly Trail Mix e-newsletter. So thank you guys again so much for coming.
Woo, thank you. And if you have any lingering questions, feel free to hit me up on social media as well.
It's an amazing part of this FKT world and ultra world that I love is that you guys are so willing to help the next person break your record.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful Saturday in Snowmageddon.
Woo, party.